FM 107.1.
Hi everyone, I hope you are enjoying summer in the Highlands. Here's a little collection of snippets for you to listen to while you relax. This year has been a really good year for the common brown butterfly. Some people call it the western brown butterfly. I've seen this around in the Highlands for a number of years, but this is the first year that I've had them in my garden, and I think it's because I've got more grasses in the garden these days, or they've flourished more than they have in the past. And the western brown butterfly likes to put its eggs in grasses, particularly kangaroo grass. But I haven't got kangaroo grass, I've just got lots of other types of grasses. And I find them interesting because they look different to each other. They're a medium-sized butterfly. The male is kind of an orange colour, but it's got lots of very dark brown markings on it. It's quite pretty in itself. It's got 4 little eyes, 1 on each wing. But the female looks quite different to the male, and she's got more orange splodges on her wings. You see them around a lot. They're the most common brown butterfly in this area. But if you're seeing brown butterflies, check them all out, because there are others in the mix that look similar to the common browns that are rarer. So the common browns have been mating around about this time of year, and now the males will begin to die off because they've served their purpose. They've done the copulating, and the females will live on.
You're obsessed.
Well, it's spring. I'm seeing it everywhere. So the females live on through the summer and just wait for things to cool down a bit, and then they will put their eggs on grasses, and that'll be the end of their time. So if you're a butterfly watcher, you'll see we initially have a flush of males, then you'll see males and females together for a comparatively short time. The males start to look really quite tatty, and they begin to disappear, and the females will continue through the summer. So I think they're an interesting little group.
Yeah, well, I've got a lot of them too.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are 5 of them all flying around each other. I don't know whether they're fighting or doing the thing that you like to talk about all the time.
Or just trying to impress each other, maybe.
Yes, I don't know. But yeah, it's a very big season for those common.
Oh, so it's
common
not
brown.
about my garden, it's just about
I
how many
don't
are
think so.
around.
I have got kangaroo grass, and I've got poa, which is another
Right,
one
yeah.
that they lay their eggs on. The females lay their
Right.
eggs in grasses. Grasses are wonderful things for
Yes.
a lot of the butterflies to lay
Yes.
their eggs on. So if you can grow grasses, which always look terrific when they're in large
mass.
clump, you know.
Yeah. Or if you can't do that, just a corner up the back somewhere that's a little bit wilder and got grasses.
Or somewhere where there's good wind and you can see it waving around.
Another thing that I've got a little bit of a concern about at the moment is that I'm hearing from my garden bell miners. We probably all know the call of a bell miner, but I will play a recording that I made. This is not from my garden. This is from a large colony of bell miners down at Malakuta, but this is what they sound like. I think many of us know that call. It is bell-like call, but it is absolutely constant. At my place, I can hear them. They're in the distance, and I'm a bit worried that they're going to come into the garden because they're bullies and they shoo away lots of the other honey eaters in particular, and they cause all kinds of problems. The colony down at Malakuta is really huge, and if you spend too much time in there, I found the sound just absolutely messes with your head. You get to the point that you can't think anymore. It's quite remarkable. And some ornithologists are conjecturing that that's part of their kind of aggressive behaviour, that they just create a wall of sound that the other birds can't stand. And the other birds' calls certainly wouldn't be heard above
No, they
colony
can't
of bell
communicate,
miners.
can they?
No.
I can see that would be really irritating.
Yeah.
Worse than irritating. I mean, you just can't communicate. So how can you say when there's a predator coming or there's food to be had or, I fancy you?
That's exactly right.
Can't do any of that.
Yeah, and the bell miners will also gang up and attack even somewhat larger birds. They'll get into groups of a dozen or so and attack larger birds and discourage them, so that the bell miners end up having a colony of a large group of birds in one area, and they more or less exclude all the rest of the honey eaters. Apparently, if they like trees with low vegetation under them, and birds like superb fairy wrens and the others that like low vegetation are allowed to remain in the area.
Oh, very good of them, am I?
Yeah,
sure.
I don't know how they stand it. And I've seen wonga pigeons pottering in that. I was inclined to think maybe wonga pigeons are deaf, but then they've got that persistent call, so
They're
that's
definitely not deaf.
No.
But both those birds have a call way below sort of...
Yes, that frequency.
That high-pitched sound.
Yeah, perhaps that's why. But people worry about bell miner infestations because they do shoo off all of the other honey eaters, and the bell miners take over an area and don't let anyone else in. And bell miners, although they're honey eaters, they eat lerps. We're back to lerps. We talked about them vaguely very early in the piece. So let's have another go at explaining lerps. There is a little insect called a psyllid, which is often a sapsucker, and it lives on many trees, sucking the sap, and it creates...
That again. Sucking the sap.
Enough. It produces honeydew, and with that honeydew, it creates a cover over itself, which is usually white and sometimes sort of mostly a kind of a conical shape, and it's very sweet, and many birds like it. Some birds will just eat the lerp and leave the psyllid to produce another lerp again, and other birds eat both the lerp and the psyllid. But in the case of bell miners, there's talk that they actually farm psyllids and lerps. So they eat them to a certain extent, but they allow the populations of psyllids to flourish so that ultimately the psyllids themselves overwhelm the trees, and a certain amount of dieback is observed in plants where there's a colony of bell miners in the area. It hasn't really been 100% proven, but there is a strong association between the existence of bell miners and the existence of dieback. So I'm hoping that this colony doesn't spread itself any further and come into my backyard.
I hear them when I go to Office Works in Mittagong.
Oh, right, there's a colony over there.
Yes, the Gibbergunya Creek is just nearby.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think I hear them. And then I also hear them in Barrel. And there's a creek there. And do you know what? I think that very often when I hear bell miners all going off, they may live around water.
Yeah. The spot in Malakuta that I know of is not wet. No.
Okay.
So we haven't actually described them. These birds are in the miner group. They're the smallest of the miners. They're, you say the size of...
Well, they're the size of almost a noisy miner, but not such a long tail.
Not quite so big, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're actually a beautiful olive colour, and they have bright yellow legs and yellow beaks. And they're really quite attractive to look at, but they like to be high in the canopy, and their green helps them to disappear into the canopy.
Yeah, they're quite hard to see. You can hear them and hear them. You're looking up, your neck's falling off your head, or your head's falling off your neck. Yes, definitely that way around.
Yeah.
And very often you can't see them. But if you really persist, you will.
Yes.
If they're going.
Yeah. If you stand still, they'll come down as well. And one interesting thing that I learned about them is that the females can select the sex of their offspring. And female offspring will leave a colony in general and try and find another area to establish a colony. So if the existing colony is in an area where there's not much food, then the females will only produce female offspring because they will depart from the colony.
Because they will migrate out.
Yes. Whereas if there's plenty of food available, don't know. But if there's plenty of food available, they'll increase the number of males because they stay in the colony, and the males are actually the ones that, in general, assist with the feeding of the nestlings.
I find that mind-boggling.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's my last little fact about bell miners. And
Fascinating. Well done, Floss.
Thank
Well
you.
done. That is quite something, isn't it? I just can't get my head around that. Right. Okay.
So let's have a quick little chat. We wanted to talk about places to cool your heels in the Highlands in the middle of summer. Where's a nice spot to go to dip your feet in the water, or dip more of you in the water than just your feet? And I've thought of a few places. One we've talked about before. We went recently to the Marilla Flora Reserve, and we found a lovely little patch of river where the river comes down over. Is it a river or is it a creek there?
I think it's is it Bundanoon Creek?
I don't know.
Oh, I'm not sure.
We'll
I have to go
find
back
that
to
out.
my map. Anyhow.
There's a watercourse that comes through there, and it goes over a lovely area of shallow rock, and you could just sit on top of the rock. It's very pretty. Lots of birds calling around the area.
Lots of really interesting birds. We did have, it was a remarkably nice walk just alongside the river, wasn't it? Beautiful.
And another spot that is nice, that's shallow, not for swimming in, is up near the start of the Picton Weir fire trail. We've sat there on picnic chairs, you and I, a few years ago, with our feet in the water having our lunch.
Right.
The river runs over the rock there.
Right.
Recently, I went up and checked out Blue Pool up on the...
Carrington Falls?
Yes, over in that
Carrington
direction.
National Park?
Jamboree Road, is it?
Yes,
That's called over
down
there?
past Robertson, down Jamboree Road. And gosh, that's a beautiful area, and you can swim there, can't you?
Yep, there's a lot of lovely water spots to
And
see.
great lookouts.
Yes.
And a nice picnic spot.
Yep. It's a lovely area to go
It is.
to.
I would advise, though, for that area to try and go when there aren't a pile of children who've just finished, just in schooly week or something like that,
Yep,
because it does
apparently
get
it can
quite
get
crowded
busy.
because it's such a good place.
Yes. I was there quite early in the morning at Blue Pool, and there was no one else there but me.
That's the way to go.
But I have to say, I'm not swimming in Blue Pool. I'm sure lots of people do, because I can't see the bottom. I like to be able to see the bottom if I'm getting into a river.
Really?
Yes,
Oh.
Fred. So
Oh, I quite like the idea that there's
the
a
mystery, the
a
challenge.
monster at the bottom. And when you know how the surface is really warm, and then you put your toe down a bit and it's freezing cold, and you think, oh. Well, one of the places that I've gone is Mermaid Pools on
Yes.
Bargo River.
Yes.
Now,
But
it's a bit
not for the
slippery.
faint-hearted, I believe.
No. And again, you need to pick your time.
Yes, it's pretty popular, and apparently gets attended by ambulances on a fairly regular basis.
Well, it's actually quite dangerous. You do see a lot of crazies jumping off rocks, and there are rocks below. But if you're gently swimming, it's fine. But it's a bit slippery getting in. But it is so beautiful. I mean, there's a price to pay for everything. And talking of that, one of my favourite places, which many people don't go, but of course now everybody will race there. But I don't know if they ever will, because you do have to walk a fair way. And that is into Stingray Swamp.
Oh, yes.
Which is in Penrose Forest.
Yes.
And
It doesn't sound very attractive.
doesn't
Needs
sound, but it
rebadging.
is beautiful beyond words. But the price you
Beautiful
have to
beyond
pay
words.
is a bit of squishiness between your toes.
Right, no, I'm out.
You're out. Yeah. It's worth it. Just as soon as you take off, they're out there. There are reeds, there are bottle brushes all around you.
Oh,
And there's very rarely other people there.
oh right.
It is gorgeous, but you have to walk a long way and you have to walk back a long
out.
way.
Yeah.
But it's probably my favourite place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. Lou, you told me excitedly during the week that you had seen some swifts. So
Yeah.
tell the listeners about swifts, please.
Oh, do you know what swifts are?
They're birds.
Good.
They stay on the wing for extended periods of time. In fact, I read about a study where they tracked a bird a swift that stayed in the sky for 10 months non-stop.
I must have read the same one. That's right. On the wing all that time. Now, they look a little bit like swallows.
Yes, that's true.
And where I saw them was there was a thunderstorm, a really dramatic front coming over my garden. And I was watching the front, and ahead of the front were these birds really, really high in the sky.
Right.
These were swifts.
And about how many? I'm just trying to picture.
Well, they tend to flock. It's hard to say because they're moving at an enormous rate just ahead of the front. This time I saw what might be 40, 50,
wow.
something like that.
Oh, wow.
All heading up, as I say, lined up.
front of the storm.
And they're flying very, very high. They glide.
Mm-hmm.
You might think you're looking at a swallow. But a swallow...
The shape of their wings.
Yeah, but the shape of their wings is actually different. They have a very short forewing, the bit next to the body, and then a sort of U shape, and then really long pointed wings at the ends. And they only flutter the ends and glide.
Lou's demonstrating, everyone. I'm
flattering.
sorry I can't show you what she's doing.
Yeah, I'm flattering. And they are remarkable flyers. And what they're doing with that front is that the front is pushing flying insects ahead of the storm. And they are catching the insects.
Wow.
And that's what they do. They feed entirely on flying animals. Very often you will get those nuptial flights of ants or termites or even mayflies high up in the sky, and they will be swooping after them.
Oh, right. Because I was wondering about that. I was thinking, wow, imagine having to find your dinner for 10 months just in the sky. But I hadn't thought about the flying
swarms, the flying swarms.
Yeah.
But also another thing that they're very, very partial to, is ballooning spiders.
Yes. But I don't know how many of those they're seeing.
Well,
I suppose that would be a seasonal phenomenon as well, wouldn't it?
in different countries, yes.
Yeah.
So they breed way up in the northeast Asia, and they come here every summer.
After breeding. Yeah.
And I did wonder, as I was looking at this front, was it coming from the northeast?
Oh,
Because it was quite early on in the summer, and I thought, are they just being helped along?
Yes.
And when the front arrived, they were
Well
gone.
be, yeah.
I never saw them again.
Clever.
No.
Right. And I understand that relatives of our swifts, we have 2 different types here, I think.
Yeah, these ones were fork-tailed swifts.
Right. We have fork-tail swifts and needle-tails.
Yes, that's right. They are, let me have a look. Beg your pardon. They are not fork-tailed. They are, these ones are the biggest ones. They were white-throated needle-tails.
Right. And the other option would have been fork-tailed swifts.
It would.
But they have relatives in Asia, other swifts, and they're the ones whose nests people used to eat. I don't know if they still do.
They do.
Still do.
And now they manufacture, because these guys nest in caves and they may roost in caves, but mostly actually they live on the wing.
They even copulate on the wing.
Yep. They sleep on the wing. Apparently half the brain just closes down and they just keep flying.
Amazing.
So they used to be in these caves in China and I think Thailand, a number of different countries up there in Asia. And at the breeding season, they produce a lot of saliva. And the saliva is used in making of the nest, and it is almost entirely made of saliva.
Wow.
Hung into these caves or even buildings. And what they're doing now, it's very dangerous going into those caves and collecting that nest, those many nests, to make this very expensive, frankly, I think it sounds disgusting, but very expensive bird's nest soup. It is a specialty.
Which is popular because it's supposed to be an aphrodisiac and it's supposed to provide health benefits, I think.
Right.
But anyway, you were saying what they're doing now.
It's just gelatinous and horrible. I think it looks
doesn't
really
appeal
horrible.
to me.
Anyway, it doesn't. So people have to go in there and collect them. In the old days, that's what they used to do. A very dangerous job, very athletic job, climbing up cliff faces and so on and so forth. Now they build special buildings for them to nest in. But then they go and steal their nests. So it's not terribly kind.
And there are concerns that it's having impact on the population of those.
Well, yes, absolutely. Yeah. But why they live on the wing is because they can't actually perch. They're not perching birds. Mm-hmm. They can only hang. And that's what they do. They hang literally on vertical surfaces with 4 toes at the front.
Oh, right.
So they're in a group of birds called non-passerines. The passerines are the perching birds. They're most of the birds that we think about, but there's quite a lot of birds that aren't passerines. Now, the passerines...
She's gesturing again.
The passerines are perching birds because they've got one toe at the back and 3 at the front, and they can lock onto a branch when they go to sleep.
Like everybody's budgie.
Yeah. But I always used to wonder why they didn't fall off when they were asleep.
All the same. I agree with you.
Yeah, but there's a lock mechanism in their legs.
Yeah.
These guys can't do that. So they've got 4 claws that hang either on a vertical, on the outside of big trees vertically, but very often they actually will perch behind waterfalls.
Oh, right.
And this is why we cannot find any photographs of perching swifts, because they will perch behind, if you please.
So we are not going to have very many images with our audio on YouTube for swifts.
Well, I won't be able to produce any, I'm sorry. Anyhow, they're remarkable birds.
Yes.
We're very lucky to have them.
They're on the wing all that time. I think it's remarkable too. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again in February. In the meantime, pop over to Going Wild in the Highlands on YouTube and you'll hear a whole lot of other snippets over there. Bye.